channel. Thank you for coming back if you've been here before, and if you're new, please like and subscribe if you enjoy this video. So first of all, an update on what's been happening since I last saw you. If you remember last time we were together, we were working on how to make a hand. So I've done a little bit more to the hand since we last saw you. It's not finished, but I don't know whether I will finish it actually. It was just an exercise really to show you how I make a hand. So if we can look down at this camera, Rob, this is how it is now. Since I saw you last, I have actually lengthened the fingers slightly because I felt that they were a little bit on the short side. So the fingers are all virtually finished. I think there's a bit more work to do on the nails if I continue with it. I'm not really sure what I would do with this anyway, but it was quite a useful exercise for me as well to practice making hands. So you see it's still quite rough, it needs a lot of sanding and things if it's going to finish, but that's how it now looks. So I hope that was helpful last time we met. If those of you who have a few problems making hands, as you know I always used to, and I've practiced quite a lot, and this is how I make them now. So there's the hand. The other thing is this weekend I've been running a workshop, a papier-mâché workshop, introduction to papier-mâché. Can I go back at that? Thank you. And so I've had two people with me this weekend learning how to do this. They're complete beginners to papier-mâché, and they did actually some lovely work. I mean, it's amazing what they achieve in 2 days. We did from 10 till 4 yesterday and today, and I've got some photographs to show you. But first of all, what we did, I try and show them in the 2 days all the different processes I use to create a figure. Now I leave it quite open to them what they do. They can do a human figure, which is, as you know, what I like to do, or they can make an animal. But the two ladies who came this weekend decided that they were going to have a go at making a bust, just a head and shoulders figure of about this high. So in order to, because we're very short a time over 2 days, you know, there's not a lot of time for drying in between stages. So I tend to give them, people that come to my workshop, a little pre-made head on a stick, so that they don't have to start from scratch with the armature. So inside here is just a ball of newspaper with masking tape around it, and then this is just coated in the papier-mâché clay. So they all started with one of those, just to sort of speed up the process so that they had something nice and firm to work on. And both of them actually created something really nice. So one lady decided to make to use her daughter as a sort of very rough reference for her head and shoulders, and the other lady made a rather wild woman with wild coloured hair, and she decided to do hers on a backdrop, so it's more like a bas relief. So she had the base, the back, and then the head coming out of it. But I'm going to show you some photographs now of them. With their permission, they've allowed me to show you what they did this weekend. So if we can have the first photograph, Rob, please. So this was, this is not the first photograph, this is a bit later into the process. So this lady is the one that was modelling it loosely on her daughter, who lives in Australia and has this sort of bush hat which she wanted to incorporate. If we can go back to an earlier one, Rob, one of the black. Well, let's just run through them, and then we can always go back to them. So that was the layout before they arrived. That was my work table with all the things that they're going to need during their 2-day workshops, and I made them a batch of clay each, which is what's in these pots that's on the turntables. So they all had some papier-mâché clay. Should we go on to the next one? So this is the early stages of the lady that's on the backdrop with the wild hair. So you can see it's quite an extreme facial expression, wide open mouth, screwed up eyes, lots of lines on her forehead. Great pose, great position for the mouth and everything. So it's actually quite skilled to do something like that with an open mouth and teeth. Teeth are always difficult. So she did really well with that, and we'll see the finished product in another photograph. Okay, next one. This is the lady's daughter that I was telling you about that we saw just now in the early stages. So in this photograph, she's actually added the hat and the hair, and she's got the shoulders, which is slightly too wide, but you know, at this point we didn't worry too much about the proportions. We were just practicing all the different processes, but I think you'll agree that she's done a great job. This is her first attempt at sculpting anything, so I think it's fantastic what she's achieved. Here's the wild woman now with the hair starting to be applied, and this was nice that she got the chance to try this process for making hair, where you make lots of little tiny coils of clay, you roll them in your fingers very finely, and then drape them around to produce this crazy hair. And you can, it's a good view here of the open mouth with the teeth. So it's a very dramatic pose, and I think she's accomplished it really well. And also the backdrop, what she used here, because we didn't have time to prime a piece of wood as the backdrop, we actually used a piece of polystyrene and covered it with the clay, and I think it's very effective actually. She very lightly coloured it in the end, and it looked like a sort of rough piece of stone, so it's very effective. Next photo. Here they are working on their pieces. Okay, next one. And this is the finished version of the girl with the bush hat on. I think she's done brilliantly, and she tried all the processes, because as you know, I tend to colour my pieces not with paint. I never use paint, and so they didn't either, and they coloured, in this one, the face is coloured with coloured powders just rubbed into the dry papier-mâché. The same with the hair, but the hat and the clothing is done with tissue paper applied with water first of all, and then glued and varnished. Okay, next one. And here is the crazy lady with the hair, and here she used the powder effect for the skin and eventually the hair. We haven't come on to that in this picture yet, but she also used tissue paper for the outfit that the woman is wearing, very effectively, I think. And that's the finished piece. It actually looks like a painting, but if she was to turn it sideways, you could see that it's very much 3D. And I think she's achieved something, you know, really exciting with the coloured hair and the facial expression. Is that all of the photos now, Rob? Yeah. So that was the workshop this weekend, and I think they both seemed to thoroughly enjoy it, and I enjoyed it too. And while they were working, I also had one of these little heads, and I made a very rough figure as well, so that when we reached various stages, I could just demonstrate slightly, you know, how we do different features. So this is the piece that I made. I don't know whether I can go to a close-up, Rob, please. Yeah. So I decided to make this rather jowly man. So he's very flat at the moment because I haven't done the back of his head. Trouble with me having a go at doing something is that I have to keep stopping to help them, so I didn't actually finish mine. But this is how far I've got with it, and I think I probably will do a bit more work on him actually, because I quite like him. Like his face. I think I might turn him into some sort of, I don't know, either like a businessman or, I don't know. Not sure what I'll do with him yet, but it was quite fun to do while they were working alongside. Okay, so that's that. As you might know if you've watched these videos before, I've recently been to Venice for holiday, and I was there during the Venice carnival, where, if any of you know this, the people dress up in amazing costumes and walk around the streets dressed in these ancient Venetian costumes. So I was very inspired by this and decided that I wanted to make a Venetian person myself from papier-mâché, partly because while I was there I went to this very interesting shop where an artist was working with just paper. She makes all sorts of things, earrings and jewellery and little scenes in boxes, all out of paper. And she's also got a lovely stock of handmade Italian papers. So while I was there, I bought this this piece of lovely handmade Venetian paper that you can't really see the colours, but it's a beautiful green colour, and it's very fibrous. I think it's actually got sort of vegetation in it, set into the paper itself in the process of making the paper. So it's lovely to work with. It's really beautiful actually. And so I used that paper in this piece for parts of it. So this part of the dress is made from that paper. So it's not finished yet by any means. I've still got quite a lot to do. This hand has got to be finished, and there's a little bit of a sleeve to be coloured here, and I'm going to talk to you a bit more about that in a minute. And in her hand here, when I finish, this hand is looking rather claw-like at the moment, so I've got to do quite a lot to that to improve it. But eventually she'll be holding this red rose, which is also made out of paper. So she'll have this, which is, I think, is a nice sudden contrast to all the green that she's wearing. But if I show you up close, she's got a Venetian carnival mask on. Can you see that? Which would be a white mask that they wear over, so you can see her real eyes showing through the mask. And there's this ruffled front, all paper, different paper effects. This is a ruffled effect. The dress, all coloured paper, no paint on here whatsoever, and a little bit of gold leaf in various places. So on the mask I've put some gold leaf, and on her shoes you see a little shoe pointing out here, and on her cane various little bits of gold. I'm going to actually dull it down a little bit, dirty it up a bit if you like, because some of it to my eye is a little bit too bright. But I think she's coming on quite well, and I did quite an elaborate hat. So she's got little pieces of gold within her hat. I made some feathers from paper. A hat for this very flamboyant outfit. And even underneath she's got sort of pantaloons on underneath, and this petticoat and the skirt underneath. So there's still a bit to finish on this, but she's taking shape quite well now, I think. So in a minute I'm going to just do a little bit of work on this so that you can see how I apply the paper rather than paint. But then just one other thing to show you is a bit of shameless self-promotion, if I can find it. Where did I put it? Oh yeah, here. Yes, I was recently featured in a magazine called Hidden Talents, which is quite nice. It's a lovely magazine. It's run by a charity called 3 Arches, and they contacted me and said, would I like to be in it? So I said yes, of course. And so this is the magazine, and you have to give a donation to the charity, but not very much money. But then they ask you to just write a little bit about yourself and send some photographs. So, and then they give you 2 pages of just stuff about you and some pictures of your work, and it's a nicely produced magazine. And this is produced as a physical magazine, but it also is an online magazine, which they say it goes all over the world. So I mean, it's a great advert for me if it does. So I was pleased to be part of that. Another quick update on Kyan. If you remember the boy that I sculpted that sadly died, and his parents asked me to sculpt him. He is now being delivered to Australia, and they are delighted with him, I'm pleased to say. And they sent me a lovely photograph of him in position in their home, and I haven't actually got that to show you, but it is nice that they're very pleased with it, and he's back with them now, which is really nice. They're very pleased about that. So that's the sort of update on things. I've also got a new commission which I have started on, and it's I think I told you about this in the last session. It's 4 people with sort of arms around each other, 4 friends, 2 couples on a ship, and they sort of met on this ship on holiday and became friends, and the one couple want to give a present to the other couple when they go and visit them in America in the autumn. So they've asked me to make a sculpture of the 4 of them. Now the pose that they were in lent itself quite nicely to actually doing a relief panel rather than a complete 3D sculpture of the 4 of them. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and I've started the panel itself, not the figures yet. I haven't started the figures yet, but if you know anything about doing bas relief panels, it's a bit like a theatre set really. If you know anything about theatre scenery, there's a series of flats, they call them, which come forward towards you. So there's things in the distance, then the scenery comes forward and forward, and it gives you this 3D effect of looking through the set when people are on stage. And you use that technique really with this. So you do the things that are furthest away first, and then you gradually move forward to the things that are closest to you. So the figures are going to be the 4 things that are right in the front. So they will be the largest thing. So in the background, I've got the sea, because they're on a ship, and a distant little piece of land, and the ship railings, and they're going to stand in front of that. So this is how it looks. Do you want to drop down? This is how it looks so far. So here's the sea and the distant coast and the railings of the ship, and the figures will stand in front of this railing, so they will come forward. I can sort of demonstrate slightly with some. This is not the head that I'm going to be using. This is a sort of head I worked on a while ago and rejected, but you can see the effect it will have. I'll try and show you the effect anyway. So here's a little head. If you imagine that is one of the figures, it isn't one of the figures, but just pretend it is, standing in front of the railings. So that'll be the sort of scale of the people. So it'll go down to probably about there, just above their waist, or just below their waists. So it won't be a full figure of them, but if you can imagine that their heads will probably be on that level. So there'll be a figure there, one here, one here, one here, standing in front of these railings. So you won't actually see much of these railings, but they'll be in between the people, and they'll also give me the next level forward, if you're thinking like theatre scenery. And if I just show you my rough drawing that I'm doing for this. Oops. So this will be roughly how they're positioned. So railing will go along here, perhaps that sort of height, and the sea in the background there. And this is a very rough sketch of how they'll be with their arms around each other. Very rough sketch, excuse that. If the people are watching, I hope it'll look nicer than that. But that's roughly how it's going to be. So if you imagine that in front of here, okay, it's difficult to demonstrate it, but in my head I know what I'm going to do. So that's what I'll be working on over the next few weeks. So hopefully when I next see you, this will be much further on and you'll be able to see what I mean by it all. So that's that. So I think now if I just show you a little bit of how I apply the colour to this Venetian lady. There's a little bit left to do on that. I'm not going to work on the hand this evening because I need to do a certain amount of sanding, and I think I might even need to take the fingers off and start again on this one because it is very claw-like. I don't really like it, so I might just take it off and do it again. But once that hand is done and this the remains of this coloured paper is on, then she'll actually be finished. So there's not a lot more to do, but what's left is quite fiddly. So if I show you the papers that I've been using, so this main dress here, you saw the Italian paper I've got for this one, and this paper here is actually this. I really liked this paper because it's got a sort of, I don't know, William Morrissey look to it. It's these big flowers on it are too big for the scale of this piece, so I don't use those bits, but I use all the pieces in between because I think they look quite nice entwined around it. And you don't put it on in one solid piece like this because it would just crease and get into a terrible mess because it's very fine. This is actually a napkin, a paper napkin, which come, as you probably know, they come in 3-ply. So that's too thick for what I want to do. So I actually take off the 2 backing pieces and just leave the front piece. So it's very, very thin and very fragile. You can tear it very easily. But this is what I use, and I put it on with water first, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. The other colours on here, this one is just a very straightforward plain piece of tissue paper, this colour, a sort of bluey green colour, and then the other colours on it are the Italian paper and a little bit of very pale green tissue paper that I've used for things like the scarf, the feathers, a few of the decorations, the ruffle on the front of her dress. So there's just a little bit left of this paper to put on. If I show you the back here, there's the back of her arm here to do, and I just want to neaten up the area around the collar here. So I'm going to show you how I do that now. Oh, you can get a good view of the hat here with all the flowers in her hat and the feathers. Okay, so I've got a few little pieces of this coloured, this paper that I just showed you here, the tissue paper. So what I do is I rip them up into small pieces, and it's sort of magical really that you rip up a piece of paper, you reassemble it on the sculpture, and it looks as if it's been put on as one piece, but it hasn't. Now she's quite difficult for me to hold at the moment because she's got various bits of paper which I don't want to squash, but all I've got here is just a pot of water and a brush. There's something stuck on it, so I'm just going to put this paper on with water, and once you're happy with where it's positioned, then you can glue it on. So I'm just going to put the paper on, just going to let the water slurp it up. So you just use your paintbrush to just brush the paper onto the sculpture. If you're happy with it, you can leave it. If you're not happy with it, you can literally just flick it off and it'll come off very easily, and you can reposition it. It's a very forgiving way of colouring sculptures because, well, unless you're a very good painter. I'm not good at painting, and I find this much easier to do. It's fiddly, but you get really nice, neat edges. So, you know, where two different colours meet, you haven't got to have a very steady hand. If you were painting it, you know, you'd be perhaps shaking like this to get a good join between the two colours without actually getting the wrong colour on the wrong bit. But doing it this way, you've got another go at it if you go wrong. I work in quite small pieces because if you make the pieces too big, you run the risk of it creasing up and just getting into a mess. So, can you see that? It's all gradually covering up the white clay. Just one little piece left here. I think the two ladies I had working with me this weekend at the workshop, they used this process and found it very pleasant to do. Actually, it's quite therapeutic. It's quite restful just applying pieces of paper to a model like this. So with the any sort of wrinkles and creases you can see, deliberate wrinkles and creases like the folds in the dress, you do those with the clay, and so when you come to put the paper on, it just naturally looks like creases and folds and drapery within the piece, which is another reason why it's such a nice process. I'm using a very small bit now, just to get this little bit here. So this cuff on her sleeve is going to be done in a different paper. So I'm just going to stop on that one, that type of paper just there. Oh, I've just seen another little tiny bit that needs covering. So that's that done. So I think now all the areas that I want this particular patterned paper have been done. So I've just got this area under her collar here where this Italian paper joins this patterned paper. I just feel that's a little bit untidy around there, so I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit. And the way I want to do that, because it's going to join another paper, I'm going to just make a fold to get a nice straight line. So I'm just folding the paper so you can see that that's a nice straight line now. So I put that on there, position it. Be a little bit careful that you don't move it when you apply the water. Take it round the corner here. I'm quite happy with that now. That's much neater. So I don't know if you can see that. It's got a nice neat edge there now, and this sleeve is now completely covered. So what I would now do, I won't do it now actually, but that would now be coated in glue to seal what you've just done. And because you put it on with water, it's actually on fairly firmly. You have to be a little bit careful when you do the gluing that you don't lift the paper with the glue, but if you're careful, that is actually on quite securely, and especially if you leave it to dry a little bit before you add the glue. So let me get a good view of her face there. I've added a little ring on her finger there, which according to all my reference photos they would wear on top of their gloves, but that hand again has got to have a bit more done to it, and it's not glued yet, it's just positioned with water. So that's that. So I think that's all I want to do on that one. Now I might actually just show you a little bit of work on this one I did at the workshop this weekend, this piece, just to show you how I'm going to go about doing this rather jowly man. So I've done quite a lot on his, can we go back down onto this one please? I've done quite a lot on this side of his face, so he's got the bags under his eyes are in position. And I've done his sort of jowliness around here, but I want to do a bit more to this eye to make this a bit more hooded, his eye, and to put a bag under his eye here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now. So I've got my clay here. It's actually still quite wet, so I'm having to be a bit careful with it. So the first thing I want to do is to just make his eyelid a bit more hooded, to fill in this space between the eyelid and the brow. So it just requires a little piece of clay. I'm going to use this sort of spoon-shaped tool, which is actually quite a nice one to use because it smooths things quite nicely. So just going to smooth that round there and let this eyelid droop down a little bit over his eye. So I want to keep the depth of the crease here in this corner of it, in here, but swoop it over the brow here and let it come down, sag down over his eye a little bit there. I do like doing faces like this, which are a bit sort of craggy and imperfect. And apart from the fact that it makes sculpting easier because, you know, you're not aiming for complete symmetry of the face, it also is just nice to see lots of character in a piece, I think, anyway. So yeah, that eye is better now, it's more sort of saggy. And now I'm going to just give him a bit of a bag under his eye. So make a little sausage shape with the clay, just put it on under his eye here. So I just dip my sculpting tool into water because that helps to just spread the clay a little bit. So I'm just attaching it under his lower eyelid, and then I want it to be quite a pronounced bag. Like that, and then quite a ridge joining into his cheek here. You can also use a paintbrush just to help you move the clay around a little bit. Give it a little nudge to get these craggy, wrinkly areas. You see that? Those baggy eyes taking shape. But what we need to do is to make sure it links in nicely to the rest of the face, that it blends in. So I'm just going to take that in to the corner of his eye. So I quite like that. I'm just going to use the paintbrush to just push the clay up a little bit. If you've got any suggestions for what you think this man should end up being, you know, what does he say to you when you look at his face? What sort of person do you think he is? And you know, send me some suggestions. And I want to just the bridge of his nose here, just want to give that a bit of perhaps a little bit of lumpier skin there where a wrinkle is forming. So very small pieces of clay. So I put this little piece of clay on here. I just want to quite fiddly. Just want to give him a little wrinkly effect there. So it's almost like a frown. I don't want to make it too frowny because I don't think he's an unpleasant person. Perhaps he's a bit of a ruthless businessman when needed, but he's not. I don't want him absolutely frowning. So just soften that off a bit. But I find it helps when I'm creating figures of people, to have a little idea of their possible character. It helps you just work on the features, get the character of them. So I think he's going to be more or less bald. I think he'll have some hair at the sides here, but I think it'll add to his general cragginess to have him a little bit bald. Now with the mouth, I've had his mouth, I want his mouth slightly twisted, so this top lip is dropping down a little bit on this side, and there's a hint of teeth inside. I don't know if you can see that, there's just a little hint of some teeth. So he's sort of smiling. Obviously his ears are a little bit, they've got a bit squashed actually. They're still soft enough for me to just pull them out slightly. Part of me thinks he looks a bit like a James Bond baddie, but tell me what you think. And I've made his neck quite wrinkly, where he's sort of the folds of his neck are just coming down onto this. I've actually got him stuck into a piece of polystyrene just to help support him, but that, you know, I can usually just snap that off when he's safely dried out. You can see the remains of the cocktail stick sticking out the bottom here, because as you know, he started off as a little head on a stick. So I'm just going to secure his ears a bit now that I've pulled them out slightly. And then I need to build the ears out a little bit, because he's only got part of an ear at the moment. So I'm just making the outer shell of this ear. When it's dry, I will put the inner bits of his ear in, all the nice sort of shell-like bits that you find inside an ear. But the first job is to just get the framework so that you can hang the rest on it. Conscious that this is a little bit wet to be working on actually, so I have to be careful because I think his neck's moving a little bit. This ear will need a bit of tidying up, but it'll make a lot more sense once the inside of the ear is put in place. But as I say, it's just the shell for the moment. So if we have a look at the other ear, the same thing. It's at the moment it's just half an ear, so I need to put the rest of it in place. As with the other ear, this is just literally the outer shell of the ear, and the rest of it will be when it's dry. I'll put the shell-like bits inside, all the sort of curly bits that you find inside an ear. At the moment, I think they're not actually the same size, these ears, so there'll be a certain amount of trimming being done at some point. But for the moment, I just want to get them on in the basic shape, and then I can refine them when things have dried. Because, as I've said to you lots of times before, those of you who've seen my videos before, papier-mâché clay is such a versatile material. You can do all sorts of corrections if you're not happy with something. You can slice things off, stick things on. It is very forgiving. So I'm not too bothered about the ears not being the same size at the moment. We can sort that out at a later date. So there's more of a close-up of him, and obviously he needs the back of his head. He's very flat at the back at the moment, but I don't think I can do any more on him this evening because he's just too wet to work on, and I'll just undo all the work I've done if I try and do any more. So there we are. I think that's where we'll leave it for this evening. So thank you very much for joining me again this evening. If you've got any comments to make and you want to leave them for me to see, then please do. And as I said before, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And I'll see you in a month's time when hopefully there'll be more to tell you about the panel with the people on the boat. And the next one is actually going to be on the 3rd of May, which is if you're in Britain, you'll know the 3rd of May is quite a big weekend for us all because it's the weekend of the coronation of our new king. But that shouldn't stop me doing a workshop that evening. We will have been out doing various things during the day because of the coronation, but I can still do my broadcast, so I hope you'll join me for that then. So thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye.